Hi everyone, this is Dinesh Sharma from Raise the Bar with DS, and today we are taking the topic of verbs. Today, verb. Okay, as you all know, verb is the action in the sentence. Fine. Verb is action in the sentence. Verb speaks about the actions of the subject in a sentence. Subject in a sentence. As we know that action is performed by a subject, every sentence has a subject. So, and that subject performs some kind of action. Even when it doesn't perform any active action, even he is sitting in a stable position, it is performing an action. So, doing action is a verb, and even not doing this action is a verb as well. So, verb is an action. Is the action in the sentence, and verb speaks about the action of the subject in the sentence. So who performs the action? Subject performs the action. Yes, subject performs the action, and subject is always a noun, hence noun performs the action. Is it clear? Verb is the action in the sentence. Action speaks about and verb speaks about the actions of the subject in the sentence. And subject performs the action, and subject is always a noun. Hence, noun performs the action. There are there are not two, in fact 5 kinds of verbs. 5 kinds of verb. There are 5 kinds of verb. Let me name them. First one is finite verbs. Second, non-finite verbs. Third one is auxiliary verbs. These are called primary auxiliary. Yes. What are they? They are B type, verbs, oblique, do type verbs, and have type verbs, auxiliary verbs. Fine. When we come to auxiliary verbs in detail, we will have all these clarifications of what B type verbs are, what do type verbs are, and what have type verbs are. And after that, modal auxiliaries. Modal auxiliaries are also considered as verb. They function as helping verb in specific notional sentences. And the last form is causative verbs. So these are the five kinds of verb. So today we take the very first kind, finite verbs. Finite verbs, as the word suggests, finite means limited. These verbs are limited by the changes of tense and subject in a sentence. Okay. What do you understand by this point? These verbs are limited by the changes of tense and subject in a sentence. Here I mean that when you change the pronoun or noun of a sentence by singular to plural, verb form changes. At the same time, when you change the tense of the sentence, like you write a statement in present simple tense, and when you just convert it into past, you have to change the form of the verb. So when the verb form changes with the change in tense and subject, it is called finite verb. Finite verbs are limited verbs. Fine. So let's take some example in a sentence. Okay. Say he speaks in English fluently. This is a statement in present simple tense. Now I change the pronoun. I speak in English fluently, and you see the change in the verb. Here we have extra s added to verb, and here we don't have any verb, any extra alphabet or extra letter added to the verb. So this is called pronouns change or subjects change. Fine. The next example we take. Now I change the tense of this statement. They knew, or let me use the same verb. They spoke in English fluently. Here you see when we change the tense in the sentence, the form of verb changes. So this is the point that I would like to explain here, that finite verbs are the verbs which change as per the change in tense and change in pronouns. Is this point clear? Give me yes, no, or any feedback from your side.
Yes, sir.
Fine. So, Pranesh, can you tell me what I just explained?
Types of verb.
What is the first type?
Finite and
First one. First one is finite verbs. Finite verbs are limited verbs. Mean they are limited by the changes of tense and subject in the sentence. आप सब्जेक्ट चेंज करोगे वर्ब की फॉर्म बदल जाएगी, आप टेंस चेंज करोगे वर्ब की फॉर्म बदल जाएगी, और फॉर्म बदलने वाली वर्ब को क्या बोलते हैं हम? फाइनाइट वर्ब्स बोलते हैं बेटा. क्लियर?
yes, sir.
मनीषा, आर यू देयर?
Yes, sir.
Clear?
Yes.
Anand, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Clear or not?
Clear, sir.
Fine. Okay. So now let's move on. There are two types of finite verbs. There are two types of finite verbs. First one is you can say transitive verb, and second one is intransitive verbs. So let's take transitive first. Transitive verbs transitive verbs are those verbs. Transitive verbs are those verbs that transfer the meaning or action from a subject to an object. Transitive verbs are those verbs that transfer the meaning or action from a subject to object. Like, for example, I teach you. I teach you. It means I am performing the action of teaching and I am transferring the teaching action to you. So teaching is a transitive verb. Teaching is a transitive verb. Let's take some example of transitive verbs and you will make it more clear. To make it more clear, let me give you. I play football. She eats food. They write an essay. She loves pizzas. Yes. So in all these verbs, in all these examples, you see the pronoun that lies before the verb is called subject, and that noun that lies after the verb is called object, and the action is being transferred from subject to object. I play. What do you play? What do you play? What do you eat? Or what does she eat? What do they write? What does she love? So when you answer this question of what, you will get object. So transitive verbs are those verbs that transfer the action from subject to an object, which means transitive verbs take an object to complete the meaning. Transitive verbs take an object to complete the meaning. Okay. Transitive verbs are mostly used in active voice statements. Active voice statements. Okay, so whenever there is an object in the sentence, you will call it active voice. Means your statement is active. Your verb, you use a verb which is active and which is transferring the meaning from subject to object. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So transitive verb transfers the action from subject to object. This is a simple point that I want to make it clear here. Make it clear here today that transitive verb transfers the meaning from subject to object. Transitive verb transfers the action from subject to object. There are three types of transitive verbs. Yes. First one is transitive verb with single object. Transitive verb verb with double object and transitive verb with an object and object complement. So there are three types of transitive verb. Transitive verbs are the verbs that transfer the action from subject to object, and the verbs that transfer the action from subject to object are of three types. Okay, so these verbs are transitive verb with single object, transitive verb with double object, transitive verb with object and object complement. Is it clear? Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I give you some examples of transitive verb with single object, then we will have examples of these verbs. Okay, I teach English. Who came? Let me allow him. Let me enter. Somebody just joined and he is not seen on the screen. Okay. Okay, then let's take some example. I teach English. She loves pizza. I teach you. They play football. She bought a car. These are the example of verb which has only one object. In transitive verb with single object. Okay. Then the next one we try the examples of. We see the example of transitive verb with double object. They are. Let me take. I wrote him a letter. She cooked food. She cooked me a pizza. Yes, and some more example. They sent him help. I borrow money. I borrowed him some money. Borrow, I guess borrow should not be here. I lent him some money. Let me change the verb here. Lent, L-E-N-T, lent him some money. Okay. She gave me a flower. She gave me a flower. And we promised him all the support. Yes, so these are the examples of transitive verb with double object. Mean in these verbs, meaning is not yet complete with one object. That's why you require double object. So one object is you have seen in the pronouns chart, objective case pronouns. The objective case pronouns are used in place of indirect object, and the direct object is the thing which is referred. A letter is a direct object, a pizza is a direct object, help is a direct object, money is a direct object, flower is a direct object, and all the support is a direct object. While him, me, me, him are indirect object. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then let's see the next examples of transitive verb with object and object complement. Here you have some examples. They selected Rohit Sharma, the captain. Yes, Rohit Sharma is object, and the captain is object complement, because Rohit Sharma and the captain are the same person. Is one person. Okay. I named my son Kanaka. I named my son Kanaka. या फिर पुष्पा. Yes. And they painted their house green. Yes. So their house and green are same thing. Mean they have applied their green color to their house. So this is object and object complement. Let's take some more examples. The company appointed her the receptionist. The company appointed her the receptionist. And let's take some more example. The pilot landed the plane on the landing ground. Is it clear? We have seen today we have started with the definition of verb. Verb is the action performed by the subject, or you can simply, if you go consult CBSE books or NCERT books, you will find definitions like doing words are called verb, saying words are called verb, happening words are called verb. Verb is the word that says something about the subject in a sentence. Okay, so these kind of definitions are very much popular with the school children. But when we are grown up, and when we look at these definitions from other perspective, from career perspective, then we should not go into that bookish definitions, and we need to devise our own definitions of these things. So this is what we have done today here. What we are doing today, we have started the topic of verb. We have seen kinds of verb. We have seen kinds of verb, and so verb is the action in the sentence. Verb speaks about the actions of the subject in a sentence. Subject performs the action, and subject is always a noun. Hence, noun performs the action and pronoun performs the action. There are 5 kinds of verb: finite verb, non-finite verb, auxiliary verbs. Yes, auxiliary verbs: do type, be type, have type, and modal auxiliaries and causatives. Then we started with finite verbs. Finite verbs are the verbs which are limited by. I'm again repeating. Finite verb. I'm repeating. Finite verbs are the verbs which are limited. Limit is the keyword here. These verbs are limited by the changes of tense. When the tense change, the verbs change. When you change the pronoun in a sentence, the verb form changes. So these verbs are changeable, alterable. These verbs forms of these verbs change. Okay. So we have seen some example here. He speaks in English fluently, and I change the pronoun. I speak in English fluently. Then you see the difference between speaks and speak. With he we added s, and with I we don't add. We remove the s from speak. And when we change the tense, we into past, we change the form of the verb. They spoke in English. So the verbs which changes, the verbs that change with the tense change and pronouns change are called finite verbs. Is it clear? Can you define it? Can you define the verb? What are finite verbs? What are finite verbs? कौन define करेगा? Pranesh, can you tell me what are finite verbs? Pranesh, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Pranesh, what are finite verbs? What did you get today? Pranesh, what is verb? Pranesh, what is verb? Pranesh, did you get what I explained today? Beta, be frank and tell me, have you got it or not? No?
No, sir.
कुछ भी समझ में नहीं आया?
Mm.
Okay, so let me repeat. Okay, thank you very much for connecting with me. I'm stopping the recording.